At the moment, I think people think AI is ChatGPT. And so we're trying to help people kind of go, let's look past that. Like, how do you actually use this in business, not just for yourself personally? There's like loads of things where I was like, this is so random and manual and really boring. How can I automate this? And so I used to just like hack things together. And so I did it as a test and I was like, look, worst case scenario, it'll force me to like write down a bunch of my thoughts. And the learning assistant we built basically had like a 40% higher grade. And like, as in like the students that use the learning assistant to prepare had a 4% higher grade. There's actually quite a few cases where people who are depressed have kind of like just run in circles with ChatGPT, and it's pretty dangerous if you don't actually know what you're doing with it.
Welcome to Kasa Connect. Together we're exploring the journeys of entrepreneurs, creatives, and change makers shaping the future. Today's guest, Mahdi, is founder of Humble AI, which is revolutionizing the AI industry. Dive straight into it. How would you explain Humble AI to a 10-year-old child? Tell us a bit about it.
So I'd probably say it's like having Lego bricks, like AI Lego bricks, where you can kind of easily kind of connect them all together, make your own little Lego kits, and then play with it for whatever you want. But the real whole kind of magic of it is like you should be able to build your own little AI assistants and tools without you having to be technical.
Nice. And can you share some case studies and some people that you've helped with? Because I think the whole mission is about helping people adopt AI.
Yeah. So actually, I think so some of the use cases like super wide, but the ones that I find most fun.
Yeah.
So there's actually a university out in Lithuania called ISM, and one of the professors there is this completely mad, crazy man called Egeras, and he's great. And he was like, could I run an AI simulation for our exams for all of our students? And so he had this idea, and so we ended up basically making like an AI CEO for all the students to basically interview rather than doing a traditional exam. And it was like the first AI exam they've ever run. And basically the students like loved it. They had to like interview this like fake CEO and then write up all their consulting reports for it. And it was just like a completely different experience. So that was like a really, really fun one.
That's super cool. Have you worked with like a range of kind of industries as well?
Yeah, super wide. So the other side of it, you've got like venture capitalists use it for like AI deal screening across Africa, like more like B2B companies who basically build like internal AI assistants for kind of policies or community, all sorts of things.
And how did your journey begin? What made you kind of passionate and interested in AI?
I think the AI side, I think actually it started less from directly AI, more just like this kind of frustration where there's like certain things where you're like, I really wish I could build this, but I don't code.
Okay.
And I think many times when I was like so years ago I used to do M&A, and I was actually also at Big Four as well. And there was like loads of things where I was like, this is so random and manual and really boring. How can I automate this? And so I used to just like hack things together, just inside of spreadsheets and all sorts of things. And I think for me, the kind of key piece is like, how do you make things in a way where like I can solve my own problems? And I really don't want to have to learn code because it's like, I don't think is that easy for most people. And so if you're trying to make things accessible, that's kind of where that spark came from.
And has it been a challenging ride with Humble AI, or have you guys had, because it's very current and, everyone's kind of more convinced about using AI now, has it been a smooth kind of ride trying to get customers on board?
I would say it's never a smooth ride for any new startup. Because I think there's like, you're always trying to find like the right mix of like what you believe the future to look like and then where the reality sits, and then trying to work out like what's the right way to get people from A to B. And so in some spaces we were too early and had to kind of like play around and pivot a little bit. And then in other spaces, for example, I think people like are understanding, wait, I can really use this. And now we're really trying to help people get to a place where they go like move past, like at the moment, I think people think AI is ChatGPT. And so we're trying to help people kind of go, let's look past that. Like, how do you actually use this in business, not just for yourself personally? And but now more than ever, I think there's like a ton of interest in it. There's a ton of demand in it. And now you can actually have stuff that works, which is cool. Yeah.
Apart from your AI tools, which AI tools do you use the most on a day-to-day?
So I use a lot of the traditional tools as well. So I still use like ChatGPT and Gemini a lot. Also, I think, for example, there's a lot more like AI that's like just embedded in other tools as well. So inside of like Slack, for example, these types of tools.
I'm really concerned about a lot of people kind of using ChatGPT now and asking lots of personal questions and making lots of personal decisions based on it. I mean, an article recently came out on the Times that a daughter who committed suicide, her chat was actually like instigated with ChatGPT, like validating her feelings. So what do you have to say about that? And how do you think we should be more careful in the way we use AI?
So it's funny you say that, actually. So we actually just ran something recently about like how do you use AI intentionally? Because I see a lot of people like just using it for everything, and not really thinking like what do they want out of this and how knowing how these things work. So actually the thing that you mentioned, for example, there's actually quite a few cases where people who are depressed have kind of like just run in circles with ChatGPT, and it's pretty dangerous if you don't actually know what you're doing with it. So I think this is more about helping people understand like how to use these tools and how to think about how they want to interact with it. So before they even just go to an AI system, they're like, what kind of role do I want this AI to be working with me in? Do I want it to give me advice? Do I want it to help me refine my ideas? Do I want it to like suggest things, or do I want it just to coach me without making suggestions? There's lots of different ways you can kind of work with AI. And I think we need to like, one, help people understand that, and then get them to like interact with it differently. And then two, just raise awareness more broadly around like the things that sometimes it feels like it knows, but it doesn't really know.
In a business context, have you seen people misuse AI?
Oh, for sure. I think, for example, I think in general, and I probably am slightly more opinionated on some of these spaces. Right now, I think a lot of people are trying to use it to like replace human interaction. And I just think that is a terrible kind of waste of the technology in many ways. I'm a huge believer in people, and I like connecting in person, as I'm sure.
No, that's literally, I wouldn't exist if people stopped connecting with people in person.
So whilst I'm a massive AI advocate in one area, like I'm also like super old school in other areas where like I don't want personalized messages. I want a personal message. So don't like
all my emails that I receive nowadays, half of them are from like ChatGPT, and you can tell.
Yes, exactly. And I just think that is the kind of, that's such a shame about how people are using it in those ways. So I think those are kind of some ways where I think it's used pretty badly. I think the other thing is that people don't realize, for example, that they lose a lot of nuance. And so if I asked you, for example, like, do you want to be average? What would you say?
No, I wouldn't be above average.
But fundamentally, when you're using these tools, people are getting a good average answer. So it's like, if you really want to differentiate, you need to basically do something different. And so I think people at the moment, for example, are still kind of relying on this way where it gets it to do the task. And instead, for example, we need to start thinking about it in a very different frame. And so that's why like there's a really old kind of saying called "Let 1,000 flowers bloom." And I think for me, like the way that we use technology today and the way I think we could be using technology would be think about it as a creative medium. Because you'd never say you've got too many flowers. You wouldn't say you've got too much art in the world. And actually, if we start thinking about these technologies as things that people can shape and curate and create things with, just as an expression of themselves, then actually it's less a conversation of, oh, is it cheaper or faster, or I don't need to hire so many people. It's like, what cool things can I actually imagine? And that's kind of more of the positive, optimistic version of the world that I'd rather see happen.
I really like that thing. I'm really going to take that forward with me and think about it like that. Are you in London now, or are you going to go back to Bristol anytime soon?
So I'll be back in London, and I'll be in Lithuania for a bit. Because I actually teach at the university now.
In Lithuania?
Yeah, teaching applied AI. And so
amazing.
It kind of randomly happened, and then it was just really good fun. And then we now have started deploying AI across university. So basically they've got like, they're building like learning assistants for all the different students. We do like all of their like support services team. So all the common questions that get answered now, they have like little AI assistants that can support them. And the university is just awesome. So they're like super open-minded, like just kind
That's
of.
so interesting.
Like,
how did you connect to a university in Lithuania? How did that happen? You can keep the camera rolling.
So years ago, actually, when I was in China, we used to help run Slush. Okay. I don't know if you know Slush. It's a big.
I was on your LinkedIn, and so that's where I read about it. Yes.
So it's kind of like TED meets TechCrunch meets a nightclub with founders. And a really good friend of mine, Eric, we used to work together, and he was a visiting professor there, and he was like, look, I know you're really busy with Humble stuff, but I really think you should meet this guy. And Egras, the director of entrepreneurship, is just like the loveliest guy. And he's just so excitable, and was like somehow convinced me to be like, take some time out and come teach here. And so I did it as a test, and I was like, look, worst case scenario, it'll force me to like write down a bunch of my thoughts. And then it was just so much fun. They were so open-minded. We tested this learning assistant with them. And the learning assistant we built basically had like a 40% higher grade. Like, as in like the students that use the learning assistant to prepare had a 4% higher grade. And so they were like, we need to roll this out across the rest of the university. And that's kind of how it happened.
That's really interesting because I keep hearing, AI is kind of ruining everyone's critical thinking skills. So it's really interesting how, it actually can support learning.
Yeah. And this is, again, I think where people at the moment are using AI in such a really like a level 0 version of it.
Yeah.
Because no one's really taught them how to use AI properly.
Yeah, that's true.
And so one of the big things that we're trying to do is help kind of raise awareness of like, how do people actually run and like use AI properly, intentionally, and in a way that helps support their learning and support their thinking, rather than as a replacement for their thinking.
Do you think it's important to do an AI course to learn this? Because I have been getting a lot of Instagram adverts from kind of LSE teaching an AI course now, and I am intrigued, like, should I be taking one?
So I think, for example, for that type of thing, it's worthwhile looking at some structured learning. If you really want to do that stuff, shout, and then we'll just host some stuff for free here, and we'll do it.
That would be amazing. I feel like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, and this is the thing, I think, because this stuff is new for most people, and you've got to spend a lot of time like digging in to work out like how to really use it well.
Yeah.
And then pair that with like yourself doing some self-learning and practicing and playing with things, so that it's actually like tangible and real. And this is why we normally try and get people like building something themselves like pretty soon. So we do like literally within an hour, like learn some frameworks of how to think about it and then build. And then you actually then come up with the real questions, and then you can then see how you actually improve it and know the limitations. Because one of the big things is that I think people don't understand the limitations of these systems, so that it looks like it's like super intelligent, but then it does some really dumb things. And so as an example, like even Sam Altman has said, like, if ChatGPT asks you for your bank details, don't give it to it. But most people aren't going to read the warning on it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of these things where people need to understand like how to use it, what it can do, what it can't do. But I do think it's pretty helpful for people to actually go through a bit of structured guidance around what that looks like, to make sure that they've got the skills they need to be able to kind of get the right roles, or if they're a founder, how do they like leverage AI to better support and reduce the risk and allow them to accelerate faster.
What's some of the common misconceptions you hear about AI, which is really frustrating for you?
I think, so number one is basically that they think AI is ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I think that is kind of like one thing where there is so much more from this. The core technology is a tool you can use in many different ways. And it isn't just a ChatGPT or a chat interface. So I think that's kind of one thing. I think the second thing is basically this idea that you will just suddenly replace all the people with this like super intelligent system. Because fundamentally, from my perspective, is, and you can kind of see it now already in like content creation, where people are just like generating everything with ChatGPT. It's so bland, it's so boring, it's entirely undifferentiated, and it's just noise. And I think the difference around this is that you can't replace curation and taste. Like, taste is entirely subjective and it's personal. Like, your taste of design, you can see it when you're in this beautiful space. Like, it kind of comes across. And that's because you've intentionally put care around what you want this environment to feel like. It's not about saying what's the standard design or the best average design or the common design. It's about saying like, what does Kasa want to feel like? And that curation and that taste is something you can't replace with AI. And I think this is where, again, using these tools to help you refine your own ideas is much more meaningful, I think.
If you could go back, is there anything you'd do differently?
So I think if I could go back and go differently, kind of with this view of AI at the kind of forefront, if I was a founder, I'd be thinking through which parts do I really need to know and understand and own versus which bits should I be using AI for. And so, for example, like sometimes it's actually like really simple things where it's like, if you're a founder and you're kicking off with an idea and you're setting up a little kind of wait list, you can use AI to sometimes help to basically help you like enrich all your inbound leads. And we can set that up in like 2 minutes. Nice. And then suddenly you know who is actually signing up, which then helps you pitch for investors better, but also understand who your true customer is you're actually attracting and whether it's actually on track. The second example, for example, on top of that is like being really disciplined with your own ICP, your own ideal customer persona. Because I think especially sometimes as a founder, you're like, oh, but this person's interested. Oh, and this person's interested. And it's super easy to get distracted.
Yeah.
And one thing that AI is actually pretty helpful for is like if you set and say, look, this is what I'm looking for, and you have that happen every single time you get one of these inbound leads, it keeps you disciplined to be like, oh yeah, you're right. That's actually a distraction. I should ignore them and actually focus on my core market. And there's been many times when I've looked at it and been like, oh, but actually I know I should really go after someone from Oracle. I should really speak to them. And it's like, no. You're focusing on like earlier stage founders and scale ups, not on large corporate on that side. Like, let's go focus on them first.
I'm really curious as to where the name Humble AI comes from.
So the name Humble actually, this is actually inspired from my co-founder.
Yeah.
And because our previous business that we started was a Chinese name, it's called Guanxi.
Okay.
And so, which means like networks and relationships and kind of community. And so when we were trying to find the right name for the new venture, we wanted something that tried to reflect this kind of less like tech ego version of the world, and was like, if you're just this humble human, how do you have like this little humble solution that just kind of works? And just trying to simplify things down in a way that's accessible for people. Because I think even though like the term AI, like ideally I wouldn't even say humble AI, I would just call it humble.
Yeah.
Because even the word AI, I think sometimes invokes this kind of almost like fear or anxiety that people have about technology or this like big evil superpower. And we kind of want something that's just much more grounded and much more like human and much more humble around kind of like how it operates. And so it's kind of, I guess, also tried to be reflective of the ethos that we want to kind of push forward across the tech ecosystem as well as we go forward.
No, I really, really like the name. And I think it really does that, because at the end of the day, I feel like I've always been someone who used to look at technology in kind of a like, oh, this is really scary and like all this new stuff to adopt. But, you know, when I heard of Humble AI and I went on your website, I actually booked a call with your team because I wanted to know more, and I felt like, you know, it feels like this is approachable.
Yeah. And we have this little idea of like everyone having their own little humble assistant.
Yeah.
And no one's really afraid of having a humble assistant, like a little assistant, just helping them do their things. And so it's like a very different kind of place in their mind around how they think about AI then as well. And that's kind of more where we want to help move people to, because we focus on like, how do you build like tools for teams rather than replace your team with AI, which I think is how most of the industry basically push. And we just have a much more like human-centric view. And
relationships are really important to you as well. And your last company was the CRM kind of platform you were building. Can you tell us more about that journey and how it was for you?
So definitely a lot of learnings in that. So we essentially kind of started with this idea of saying like, how do you become more like scalably helpful and kind of scale the idea of belonging in many ways? And for me, it's like a very human thing. And so it was about like, how do I build like little tools for myself where I can then be more helpful whenever a friend needs like an intro, or they're trying to get hired, or they're looking for a role, or whatever it might be. And so, and just because I also, similar to yourself, like just love chatting to people, whenever I travel, there's a whole host of folks. And so I was like, how do I make it really easy for me to be able to like search and find like whoever the most relevant person is and then help connect them? Because whenever I do, you have this kind of like magic that happens when you get like these like messages of like friends sending selfies together when different parts of the world, and it's like really beautiful what happens. And so we started basically building and like rethinking like, how do you build a kind of personal CRM from scratch? And so that's kind of what we were basically doing.
And what was the learning from that journey and why it didn't kind of take off?
So actually the biggest reason we decided to stop it actually was because when we were kind of doing discovery and speaking to lots of people, we realized that some people really felt the need, but actually we didn't feel the market was big enough for it to kind of really go and scale. And so that's kind of the reason why we decided not to end up pursuing it. But I think on the other side, the other learning around like how we were working was that there's this was our first kind of venture. And so first time round, I think there was lots of areas like product that I think before starting, we were like, oh, this is the technology. But actually like the product role in a company versus like being a kind of the technology role is two very, very separate things. And so I think when we were kind of building, there's lots of things around like who's defining what the product kind of looks like, what success looks like, how we do discovery. We just didn't it kind of fell through the cracks basically between the roles, between myself and my co-founder.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big learnings of like...
Is it the same co-founder that you're working with now?
Yes.
Okay, nice. So you guys just, revisited the drawing room and, decided to do something else together.
Exactly. Because I think like it's really, you really want to try and work out how you find kind of a co-founder and a team that you can kind of try and commit and really work with. And you got to have a lot of trust basically between you. And so I really enjoyed kind of working with Nilu. And so that's kind of why we decided to continue kind of working together.
Nice. And what is one book or podcast that you've read that's really kind of shaped the way you run your business?
So I don't know if you've come across The Knowledge Project.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so The Knowledge Project is a fantastic podcast. It's written by a guy called Shane Parrish, who does the Farnham Street blog. It's about mental models. And it kind of introduces, lots of different mental models. And he interviews lots of fantastic people from very different industries. So everyone from like a hostage negotiator who wrote Never Split the Difference.
Oh, I've read that one. That's a really good one.
Yeah. So to psychologists and all sorts of things.
Nice.
He's fantastic. So that is a really great podcast that I would highly recommend. The books wise, so I'm slightly obsessed with reading. So I would say things like The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a really classic one, which I would highly recommend for anyone who's building a team. Mindset by Carol Dweck, which about the kind of fixed mindset and growth mindset. And then probably more recently, I'd also highly recommend books like ADHD 2.0.
What's that one about?
It's actually about raising children with ADHD, but you can learn a lot about how different minds work. And so it helps highlight a lot of like kind of strategies and tactics and context to how different people work and operate, which is really useful.
Would you say you fall on the spectrum of where you are obsessed with what you're building and it's constantly on your mind?
So I would probably be in the obsessive camp. And so it's quite funny actually, like some of our team recently were like, what happened to you this weekend? I was like, nothing. And they're like, where were you? And I was like, I was just with some friends. And they were like, oh. And I was like, how come? And they're like, oh, I didn't see any Slack messages on the weekend. and it's like suddenly you realize that, I do spend a lot of my time kind of.
Have you always been like that? Or is this just something that you found that you're just so passionate about it and that's why you've got this kind of obsessive tendency?
I think there's like certain things that when you kind of get hooked into it, then I kind of go all in. So many years ago, that was China. And then I spent like 2 years going back and forth and then moved there for 4 years. And so if you ask me about Chinese tech, I was kind of like, went to my old room in my house. It was like covered with like these big market maps of all the companies. And I was like reading all the equity research and all sorts of stuff.
And what's the most exciting thing you're currently working on within Humble AI? What are you most passionate about right now?
So the thing I'm most excited about, we are soon going to be opening up some of the tooling we've been building, which helps basically someone entirely non-technical build very customized AI assistants by themselves without having to touch anything at all. And so I think the first generation of these types of tools were like still quite basic. And what we're going to be able to open up basically allows someone like even like a content creator to start basically turning from a content creator into basically an app builder, which means they can monetize a lot more than they've ever done before and basically have something more valuable that they can take to their audiences. And that's really cool because it means that you can try and help organizations that otherwise like they just make really cool content and they want to keep doing that, but they want to make it sustainable. They can start making it sustainable. Or often like communities, for example, don't have good ways of basically like always like monetizing that sustainably. And so you can start doing things that help them justify bigger memberships and things like this as well as just like add more value to their community as a whole. And so there's a lot of these kind of like more like human spaces, which suddenly can get like superpowered with their own little AI apps. And so because you can bring down the cost and the accessibility of it, suddenly people can do something way more interesting than they could before.
Say a business comes to you and wants an AI agent to make it easier for them. What's the process you take them through to develop the right product?
Cool. So actually, first of all, I'm just trying to work out like what's the real problem they're solving, because often some of the things that people think of like I want an AI for this or an AI agent, it's like they probably actually don't need an AI agent, or like there's a different way that's probably simpler or easier to solve it. So the first thing is like really digging into like, what is the problem? Who actually faces it? Is it a real big enough problem? And how have they tried to solve it already? And so that stuff is almost agnostic to the technology. And then what we then try and do is work out, okay, well, is this a problem that can get solved well from AI in like a real life environment? Because there's a lot of like Twitter demos and there's like real life. And so we try and kind of assess like for this use case, with the technology that's available today, is it possible? How possible is it? And can we prototype something up very quickly? And then when you're then trying to prototype and work out how you build, it's about understanding, okay, well, where do you get the information from? So imagine you're building like an AI assistant for founders who want early stage founder advice because that's the people that watch Kasa Connect.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool. What's the information that you trust? And so then that way you can say, great, I want my AI to focus really not on randomly hallucinating and making up information like ChatGPT. It's like, how do I train it just on the stuff that you connect? So maybe like, great, angel advice, take it from Alma Angels because they're great. Or if, for example, it's young people trying to get into venture, maybe you're looking at the included content, whatever it might be. And you kind of choose what information that you trust, the people that you trust, and what you want to curate, rather than, for example, just be like, let the AI make it up. So that's the first piece. The second piece is then working out like, what's the kind of end output that you want people to get? Yeah. So is it just like a little soundbite that you want them to get? Is it like a full guide? Is it, for example, step-by-step instructions? What's the kind of way that your like ideal kind of client wants to interact with the information? And then basically being really good at defining out like, what is best practice? What does templates look like that you think is good? Because this is where the subjective opinion comes in, not just like AI make it up.
Yeah.
And then we can then help you stitch together the middle bit, which is like, how do I go from all of these inputs to kind of all of these outputs and make it kind of work nicely? Yeah. And that's kind of where we can help try and make sure that we kind of, as the AI whisperers, try and get it to do what you need. And that's kind of where we go. But ideally, you can try and get a first version out within like an hour or less.
Oh, wow. That quick. I did not expect that.
And then it's all about, then that's when the real work begins.
You start training it.
And then you train it and test it and check it. And it's all about a feedback loop.
Yeah. Do you take any environmental considerations into account? I know a lot of people have been debating how, the use of AI is really damaging our planet because, the data centers require a lot of water and all of that kind of stuff.
100%. I think one of the reasons why we try and basically build in the way that we build is that currently the way that a lot of people use these tools, they repeat a lot of work over and over again because they kind of just resolve the problem by like asking the question. So if you imagine, so there's a really good framework for solving problems that I love, courtesy of a friend of mine called Cesar, who's great. And he's like, you can either resolve the problem, which is like when you can resolve the problem, you can solve a problem, you can absolve yourself of the problem, or you can dissolve the problem. Nice. And so if you imagine like you're walking around with a friend and their shoelace comes undone, resolving a problem is when you just tuck in your shoelace, and then 5 minutes later you have to like redo it again. Solving the problem is like stopping, tying your shoelace, and you're done. Absolving yourself of the problem is like, someone else tie my shoelace. And dissolving the problem is like, I'm going to take off my shoes. And and so often in the way that most people use AI, they're in the kind of resolve problem mode where they're like, oh, I've got this problem, let me ask AI. And you might have even done this before where you're like, oh, act like a marketeer and do X. And then you repeat the same thing like 1,000 times over and over again. And this is in the resolution of these things. And every time you do that, it means that you're going to be taking up resources and compute and essentially the energy and water consumption these AI systems build. So instead, for example, if you actually build a solution, you build yourself a dedicated AI app that basically solves that problem for you, it means you can massively reduce, for example, the amount of work that this system is doing. That's on one side. The second thing is that some of the stuff that we do, we also use good old-fashioned automation and non-AI based stuff so that you just kind of reduce essentially the kind of energy footprint of doing so. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing as we go forward, one of the things that we want to do, and we've got to wait till some of the models get good enough, is basically be able to run things locally so you're not using these huge, massive huge systems that are consuming tons of energy far away in the world. And actually you're kind of using something local on your device. And that way then we can then reduce that even further.
In terms of like for the younger generation who is looking to tap into the industry, and I know my siblings are now like all job hunting and their friends as well, and they get pulled into the direction of we should think of AI, you know, it's a really sexy place to be in, but you know, they're really confused between the corporate world. Is there some advice you can offer?
So I think if I was basically a kind of a student or professional kind of going back into the world of work today, I would be thinking about how do I help use AI as a way to differentiate as part of when I apply for a role. And what I mean by that is not about just using AI to try and write the best cover letter. Yeah. It's more about saying like, okay, imagine if I'm a sales professional, if you sit down and you build out a bunch of little AI tools for yourself that help you be an awesome salesperson, and then you go in and say, look, AI has changed the game for everything. You're hiring someone in sales, but actually, for example, here's a number of things that I've built for myself that help me basically become a 10x salesperson. And not only are you getting me, you're basically getting that knowledge, and I'll help build this across our team. This is the impact that I can have. You're super differentiated in the market. And because you have something that's real and tangible, you can really show it. And I think that way, for example, it will completely cut through the noise, because there's a lot of noise these days. So like even for example, like we're actually kind of open to hiring basically at the moment. Okay, nice. And some of the roles we don't put on LinkedIn anymore because there's just too much noise. Yeah. Everyone just kind of hits apply and does it so unintentionally. And so whereas, for example, if someone kind of finds me and pings me and says, hey, look, I've actually looked at your site, I've gone through your product, here are some thoughts on it. I would love to see how if there's a role or a fit for the stuff that I'm doing. Like the level of time that as a founder I'm willing to spend with that individual and the likelihood of them being hired is a magnitude higher. And this is where, for example, you could have gone, hey, because for example, in go to market, if someone's really passionate about going to market and they take our site, they rebuild it in a vibe coding tool and prototype something up and say, this is how I would position it. Yeah. And actually I've just put it online and I've got a bunch of people like interested. These things will massively differentiate you. And so learning the kind of core skills of like how to use AI, how to kind of like build these little mini applications is a really, really powerful skill, which every organization is struggling with right now. And so if you can basically pitch yourself and bring this in with you when you apply, it's going to make a massive, massive difference.
And to do this and to be able to do this, what are some tools you'd recommend?
So, I mean, if people are interested in these areas, it's one of the areas I actually kind of post a lot about as well. And we've got a bunch of resources that we pull together, and some of this we've opened up. So if people want to, they can just find me on LinkedIn and ping me. Or if you're really, really interested, you want to host something, then shout and let me know. If you're doing it for the community, then we can do so.
I really like that you're going through the educational aspect of AI as well, and willing to teach everyone, and just so generous with that. I think it's really needed.
And I think that the thing for me actually, and there's another friend of mine as well, where our whole view on this stuff is like, if you want to make things more accessible, you have to basically like be able to share the knowledge, and you need to do so openly, because if you don't, you have a very, very small minority of people, and that actually can use this stuff properly. And this is why we think we're in this kind of like tech utopia, but actually we're closer to the kind of tech dark ages, where you have this like tiny like sub 1% who really know how to use this stuff properly, and they're just consumers. And what we want to do is really change that to be like, okay, what could the world look like if everyone was creators? And if you really, if you can create something, then you can really understand it.
You actually said something on your LinkedIn, which I really liked. I'm just going to say it. You said, smile at the world and the world will smile back, right? And I really like that. And when was the last time that really proved true for you?
Oh my God, all the time. Honestly. So so many of the things that I think sometimes feel like counterintuitive from like a logical perspective, but if they intuitively feel right when you meet certain people and you just like do a good thing, it comes back like 10 times. And for example, like recently, so there's a little charity out in South Africa that pinged about a year ago being like, hey, I have some AI questions. Can someone help? And I just responded and said, look, we'll give you some free access. You can play around with some stuff. And didn't think anything of it. And then about a year later, this lady has been like using Humble for like loads of random, like loads of stuff.
Yeah.
And she sent me the loveliest voice message about all the things that she was doing. Like she was writing puppet scripts to like legal docs to all sorts of stuff. And it was such a great little snippet. They ended up using it as part of our Google AI demo day presentation.
Yeah.
And it was just so funny how it all kind of came around. And this one person in South Africa who I had never met until about a month ago in person, because I went to go visit her. She's told so many people about us, and so many other kind of users and companies that kind of come through her, just from her, just like
that one connection,
this
that one person. Yeah.
And that was really, really cool. And so, and same even with the teaching in Lithuania. So a very random connection, end up basically doing a little bit of teaching there. Yeah. And now it's like it's one of the best examples of what does great look like when a university rethinks education with AI. And so that's the kind of thing where I think just like sometimes doing things that don't scale, doing things that just like with people that are just mission aligned, just makes all the difference.
Yeah. No, I love that. Really purpose driven. Well, Kasa Connect is all about connection at the end of the day. So what are some ways that, the audience and listeners can connect with you, and what's something you'd like from them?
Cool. So I'd say for connecting, probably the easiest place to find me is Mahdi Shariff on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And send me a personal, not personalized message. As you were saying earlier, just be human and just send a message. And then I think in terms of what I would love to hear from you, if you're really interested in AI and you think it might be a space that you want to experiment more in, we're hiring. So maybe just take a look and have a play and then message on there. And as a founder, I always love feedback. Not just positive feedback, things that actually can be improved is like the lifeblood of a founder. So always love to hear that side of things as well.
And what's also unique to us is that we're filming in a cafe. So what's your go-to drink on a coffee break?
Oh, my go-to drink. So that's a great question. So I'm actually more of like, so I have a lot of like fresh juices and smoothies.
Oh,
I do a lot of that.
Nice.
I did recently try some Blue Lotus tea.
Ooh, I've never tried Blue Lotus tea. Where's that from?
That's a great question. A friend of mine gave it to me, and it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah. So nice. Need to find some.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the last but not least, we like to leave everyone with some food for thought. So, what's the best piece of advice that you regret not taking when you started your journey as a founder?
Actually, the importance of sleep.
Okay.
So, I historically haven't always needed that as much sleep, but I didn't realize how much it actually impacted not just me, but also the people around me.
Yeah.
And so even if you feel invincible and you feel like you can run off very little sleep, actually getting a good night's sleep, even as a night owl like myself, going to bed early and actually waking up early has been a complete game changer. And I wish I had done more of that earlier in life. And I think paired with that is basically taking time to disconnect. So taking time out, whether it's going to a coffee place and just like spending some downtime with a pen and a paper and just journaling rather than being on your mobile or a laptop, it makes a world of difference. And I think building that into your routine will completely reshape like how much headspace you have, which also drives how much clarity you have, which then I think massively increases your chances of success.
I completely agree. How many hours do you get of sleep every night now?
So I'm still not perfect, but I'm improving. That's the main thing. It's the trajectory.
Well, thank you so much, Mahdi, for coming on Kasa Connect. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
No, thanks for having me.